In this video, I'm going to go through the basics of creating an exploded view of an assembled item. So I'm going to be using this dartboard cabinet carcass as my example for this. So exploded views are quite useful if you want to show details of joinery that you can't see when a project is fully assembled, and also to sort of visually demonstrate how a project goes together and how each individual component interacts with the other components within the project. So the first thing we need to do is we have to have made our assembly, which I've showed in some of the other videos. We need to make sure we're on that assembly tab where we've got our assembled item. So in this case, it's the cabinet. Now over on the right hand side of the page, we've got these 6 boxes, and you'll notice that this one just here is showing as exploded views. So we're going to click on exploded views. I'm going to get this pop-up window come up, and we're going to be able to add an exploded view. Now we can do a range of different exploded views for different purposes. If we want to be able to take some screenshots or utilize these exploded views in drawings, which I'll show you at the end of this video. So to start with, we're just going to click on Add Exploded View. Now we can see here some instructions come up within the exploded view window. It says build steps by dragging components. Select components in the graphics area or the instance list, then drag or rotate them using the triad manipulator. So all that means is when we click on an individual component, say for example this side of the cabinet, we get this triad manipulator pop up. Now each of those arrows represents one of the axes that we can slide or move that component along. So once I've selected this side, if I want to do an exploded view where I pull all of the components away from where the center of the project is, for this one, the arrow that's pointing inwards, if I click on that arrow and I hold, I can drag it outwards and I can let go. I then get this explode step menu pop up in the top left hand corner. Now it gives me a distance. Now I can manipulate that distance by clicking and typing in. Now you'll notice that this distance for this particular part has a negative at the start of it, negative 93 millimeters. That's just telling me that to move this to the left of my screen, it's a negative movement. If I wanted to move that component inwards or to the right towards the center, that would be a positive number. So if I want to make sure that when I do this exploded view, I've got a nice consistent amount that all of the components have been moved out from the center, I'm going to pick a consistent number. So in this instance, I'm just going to use 100 millimeters. You could do less, you could do more. It will completely depend on the project and how much you want to move the components apart, and you can always come back and modify this number later if you need to. So once you've put that measurement in, you can press enter and see where it's going to sit. If you're happy with that, we can then click on the tick and move on to our next component. So when we tick, that will be highlighted yellow. We're now going to click on another component, say for example the opposite side. Again, I'm going to select the arrow that is moving or pointing in the direction or on the axes that I want to move it. I'm going to click on it and start dragging. The pop-up window comes up. This time the number is positive, so I'm going to stick with positive. I'm going to type in my 100 and press enter, and I'm going to hit the tick to accept that. I'm going to do the same thing for the top and bottom of this cabinet carcass. So click, this time I'm pressing the arrow that's showing me up and down, dragging it upwards, 100, enter, and click on my tick to accept it. If I'm now starting to have trouble seeing it, I can use my scroll on my mouse back towards me to zoom out, or if I was on a laptop, I can use 2 fingers at the top of the trackpad and drag downwards from the top, or drag from the bottom towards the top with 2 fingers for my zoom in, zoom out. I'm now going to select the bottom piece, I'm going to drag it down. Again, we've got the negative, so I want to keep that negative sign and do negative 100. And you can now see all of the outer portions of my carcass are apart. The last few things I want to do in this particular instance, I'm going to move my backboard away or backwards from the shelf. So I'm going to click on that and select the axes that will allow me to pull it off the back of the shelf. This one I only want to do a little bit, so I'm only going to go 50 millimeters off this time. Tick. And I'm going to move my shelf upwards a little bit, just away from the divider. Again, I'm only going to go 50. No, actually I'll stick with 100, and then it'll look similar to what the bottom one does. So 100, hit the tick. So now that I've completed that, I can then hit the done at the top here where it says editing explode 1. I can click on done and everything will snap back to how it was. And you'll see over in this exploded views menu that I've got, the window, I've still got this explode 1 with 6 steps. So if I want to go and edit any of the individual steps, you can see that hovering over any of them highlights the individual component that's been moved. If I want to edit any of them, all I need to do is double click and it brings up the menu again, and I can change that number. So it doesn't matter which one I press, it will allow me to edit that particular one. Okay, when I'm done, I can hit done. And if I ever want to see that exploded view again and to see what it all looks like as a whole, I can just double click on the explode 1 at the top and it will give me that exploded view. Okay, so this is really useful in being able to, as I said, show particular joinery. So we can see here our miters. We could draw some details into those miters like dominoes on those angles to show that that's what's being used in that particular instance, even if it was just the holes. We can now see pretty clearly how the housing works. Okay, if you had a stopped housing, you'd also be able to clearly show the stopped housing. And we can also see the groove in this particular instance in the pieces for the backboard to sit inside. So it's showing off all of the joinery that we couldn't see when the component was fully assembled. Now, last thing I want to go through in this video is how we can then use these exploded views that we've made within drawings. So I already have a drawing here in this particular file that I've been working on. So if I open up, doesn't really matter which one, I'm just going to click on this one. If I open up a drawing, I'll wait for it to load, there we go. I can open up my sheets over on the left hand side of the drawing, and this particular drawing has this first page and the second page, and you'll see on the first page I've got this exploded view. This is me embedding an exploded view from a basic carcass that I did a drawing of. So I'm going to show you how to embed this style of drawing into your drawings on Onshape. So if I, on my sheets here, click on Insert Sheet, I now have another sheet, sheet number 3. If I use my Insert View menu up in the top left hand corner here, we've got Basic Carcass as an option, and then we've got Orientations, and then we've got Explode Positions. So I don't actually want to insert the basic carcass view. I'm going to go into my document. I'm going to go and find in my assemblies, I want the assembly with no doors because that's the one that I just worked on. I'm going to go with, instead of a front view, I'm going to pick isometric. And you can see there, that's that 3D isometric view. Then explode position, I've got explode 1. That's the exploded drawing I just did. Okay, and you can see we get that exploded view. Now if I wanted it to fill the page, I can obviously do things like changing the scale. A little bit too big for the page. Let's go to 1:6. All right, and then I can click to put that there on the page, and then I've got my exploded view. Now you'll notice on sheet 1 of this. See how I've got the blue colouring? If I go back to here, if I right click and I put here show shaded views in the show hide section, okay, it will give me that shaded view, which just gives us a little bit of a better view of the 3D aspect rather than just showing all of the edges. But yeah, there's our exploded view. We can also change the orientation at any time by right clicking on it. So I could change very easily back to a front view. And I can move it. And you can see there, it also gives us the lines that are telling us what direction the different components have moved. So that's just a few ways that we can utilize the exploded view features of Onshape, and then how we can put those exploded views into drawings. You could obviously also, if you want very specific views, you could go back to the assembly, we could click the explode, and we could use something like the snipping tool, which many people have available on their computer. So I could open the snipping tool, do a new snip, and I could say, for example, I just wanted to show my housing joint here. I could then copy that image and I could utilize that in a portfolio of some sort. I could zoom in even further to show a specific component, screenshot that, copy and paste the image. So there's a number of ways we could do it. If I want to rotate around to see in a particular orientation, okay, I could rotate around, take screenshots that way. So there's a lot of things that we could utilize this exploded view for, in terms of taking these views of a particular project to be able to implement them within a portfolio, show a customer, client, all those sorts of things. So I hope this video was helpful, and stay tuned for the next one.